You're listening to Creative Radio with Khalil Kavan and special guest.
Ooh, I'm so full. First of all, the brunch was like the bomb, right?
The brunch was off the chain. Like the French toast. I'm a French toast lover.
Well, I mean, my thing is, if I want to go somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
I just go. Like, I'm not gonna wait to be asked, "Hey, you want to go to brunch?" I will go. So, I want to say earlier this year, as getting more into Charlotte and just really learn the area, I was like, well, let me find a really cool brunch spot. So I had seen Famous Toastery before. He was like, let me check them out, and I was like, okay, brunch. You understand?
Yes.
And they understood the assignment, so I was like, we were messaging earlier in the week, and I was like, oh, we need to do this. So,
Yes.
yeah, it was good.
It was good. I didn't get the itis. That's the good part.
I know. Now I'm full, but I'm not stuffed. Now I'm not like a pancake type of girl, but I love a really good French toast.
Yes.
Or like a Belgian waffle that's like got the crisp on it, but then gooey on the inside. Like, so yeah, it was good.
I'm hyped because waffles. When you say waffles, like that's another element for me.
Really?
People don't realize how you could really like finesse waffles.
Yeah, you can.
Add your fudge, add your sprinkles, add your cherries.
What about, have you ever made drunken French toast?
Drunken French toast?
Yeah.
What's that?
Okay, so I don't like the thin, old school, cheap. I mean, I get it. If that's what you do with white bread, but I like to get the really thick brioche, like French toast bread. So this is what you do. You get like your heavy cream, eggs, nutmeg, cinnamon.
Okay, see, we're not gonna get the people the ingredient. We're gonna have to do a whole.
Well,
you gonna have to show me.
Well,
how about you show me?
Oh, okay. So you want to come to my place and we do?
Yeah. So we're gonna do another episode.
Okay.
Based on that, so.
Well, let's go ahead and kick things off.
Let's do it.
Okay.
But before we do all of that, before we plan that out, Camille, who are you? Tell the people, who are you?
Well, I mean, I have layers. So which one of me do you want to
just give your introduction.
Oh my gosh. So I am Camille Essig. I'm host of the Speaker Podcast, the podcast where innovators and creators connect. Be sure to hit that notification bell and subscribe. I'm also on YouTube channel. I keep things very simple, so I just have the handle at Camille Essig on YouTube, and then on Instagram it's Camille.Essig. I also created Good Black Men Official. That's also on Instagram, and pretty much people are like, well, you're a woman. Why would you create a brand for men? And so Khalil, he's been on my podcast before, and we've had conversation, and it's just like I feel black men. Well, let me wind it back. So the Speaker Podcast started as a space for women to talk about, what we go through, our relationship issues or concerns and mental health. But then I began to figure out or think like, black men have things as well. And so it really started out of the Speaker Podcast as far as opening my space to have a space for black men to come and share their take on social media, mental health, being an innovator, creator, faith, just all the things that impact our community as a whole. And so that from there came the shirt GBM, or Good Black Men Still Exist, and it has really evolved into like a thing of its own. I'm also the creator of Chemistry Room Fragrances, which is my home aromatherapy brand, and that's also on Instagram at Chemistry Room Fragrances, and then of course the Speaker Podcast. So everything started out of the podcasting world, and then they all became like branches or extensions of me, or things I feel like are important or matter to me. So in that space, Khalil, I've really worked hard to let black men know and feel like, hey, I'm an ally. This is a space for all of us to sit down and talk, because there's a lot of conversation on social media, I feel like, Khalil, where the conversation is there, but it can be derogatory, if that makes sense, if I'm using the right word.
Yeah.
But I wanted it to be in a space where it's healthy, and we can be honest without being condescending, or the communication is not safe, if that makes sense. So that's pretty much what my space is about. And so we talk about mental health, relationships, finances, branding, faith, all of that on the Speaker Podcast.
Yeah.
And we did Heart and Soul. We just did Heart and Soul in October, which is an annual event where I have a panel of creators. We come on and we discuss topics that we've covered throughout the year, kind of like a roundtable discussion, and we share. It's pretty cool. So, and DJ Spade has joined us the last 2 years. It's like a virtual online party. Pretty dope. So yeah, and all that, streaming. I'm on iHeartRadio and all the other platforms, Apple Podcasts, all that. So
come on.
yeah, and I wrote a couple books too.
Oh.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So. But other than that, nothing too much going on. So.
It's a lot. It's a lot going on. That's a multi-hyphenate. You are part of the multi-hyphenate crew. She is with us on the multi-hyphenate team, ladies and gentlemen, those who's watching, the multi-hyphenate.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's been up with you? I know we haven't talked, we talk offline, but
right.
As far as on the podcasting vein, like what's been in your way?
Yeah, so if you're new here, welcome to we're doing a cross show, so welcome
Cross
Speaker
collab.
Podcast.
The mashup.
Yeah, the mashup. You remember them Disney shows, Nickelodeon, where they would have the 2 episodes come together? Yes.
Yeah.
And this is our first, so we're getting kinks out. We're learning how to do certain things. So if you're new here, welcome to Creative Radio, the place where creatives are human. Period. That's been really honing in on that. That's where I've been recently. Like, what is Creative Radio? Because Creative Radio started over 4 years ago.
Wow.
And so I knew there was a mission behind it that I wanted to talk about, or what my guests wanted to talk about. Mm-hmm. But now I realize it's where creators are human and authentic. Let's keep those 2 keys. Human and authentic. Yes, authenticity. So I'm just ready for this new chapter, this new season.
And you're here in the Queen City.
And here in the Queen City.
So how you like it so far? So I think we talked about it before. So coming from New York and then being here, it's one thing to visit the South, but living here, like Southern hospitality is a real thing. So what has that been like for you? That's
a shocker. The Southern hospitality in the South has been a shocker to me. I mean, I have family here, so of course, I've known it for them. But then, when you meet random strangers and they're like, "Hey, let me open the door for you," or "Please, thank you," I'm like,
or just even speaking,
smiling in the morning, saying good morning. I'm like, why are you saying good morning to me? Coming from New York is like,
don't look at me.
Don't look at me.
Why are you talking?
Why are you talking to me? Don't you see these earphones in my ear?
Right.
What do you know?
But what's so crazy is I wonder, Khalil, when you go back to New York to visit, you feel away because people aren't speaking to you?
Yep. I feel this type of way. When I go visit New York or I have business, I'm like, what is y'all problem? I'm like, I'm gonna need y'all to wake up. Right.
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting because of the way that I was taught, mannerisms even from when I was little. It still was, I feel like it was still a weird thing to me, with the whole mannerisms and just, but that's New York, that's the concrete jungle. So, ciao.
And see, I'm originally from Nashville.
Nashville in the house.
615, you better know it. Nashville. So, for years, Nashville, I think, was on the list for top 5 friendliest cities in the country. But since we have more transplants coming, that is changing. It's like, no, here, this is what it is. Here we speak to people, and so still having to kind of ensure or make sure that what's true to Nashville is still Nashville, because it is changing. But after joining the military, happy veteran say, and traveling and living in different parts of the country, whether it was up in New England or on the West Coast of California, and seeing how those environments were, and then coming back here, I've had to kind of remind myself, because even since being in Charlotte, being so used to being in other cities where you don't speak to people, and then reminding myself, speak, because sometimes I'll catch myself, 1,000-yard stare just walking, and people are looking like, good morning. I'm like, oh, sorry, hello.
Right.
Because I'm like, oh, I'm back in the South. Now I'm living in Charlotte, in the Southern city, versus not living in California, and then having to, reacclimate myself to that. So,
it's an adjustment.
And then I frequent Atlanta a lot, and so there, same thing. You have people that are more of a Georgian, old school mindset, and so there it's like, do I speak, do I not? If they speak, I do. And I think with the South, that's the new South, air quotes, is what we're experiencing, because those of us that are from the South.
Yep.
And then having the East Coast or New York influence, and then shifting the culture a little bit, and we're trying to like preserve it.
Mash it together.
Yeah.
That's the theme. Mashups.
So yeah, that's where it is. So
I love it. So we've been talking recently about a subject. We talked about it a little bit today at brunch, and I think finding the balance. I know people don't talk about this very often.
Yeah.
Finding the balance of being cocky.
The humility.
Yes.
Versus arrogance.
Yes.
So you were getting on me because you were like, you downplay yourself too much.
Yes. The queen was given today, and she was like, oh, you know, this whatever, like, and I was like, see, sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit, and that's where that conversation started, where, you know, sometimes we downplay ourselves for even like the simplest of things, because society has kind of taught, like, it always has to be this grand moment, you know, for you to be appreciated or to appreciate yourself.
Yeah, I know people that are arrogant to the point where it's like, you know, do I want to be around you?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's almost borderline narcissistic.
Mm-hmm.
Or walking that line of being confident but not cocky, and then maintaining your humility.
I think for me, a lot of that started with the church.
Really?
Yeah, because I feel like in church you were kind of taught, for me as a child, like you have to stay on this, you have to stay on a certain level for, I feel like, in a way, for God to appreciate you, or for God to move in your life. Like, you don't want to be too, you know, too in your head, or too.
So you think it was like, stay humble so God doesn't have to humble you?
Yes.
Gotcha.
And the more older that I'm getting, this is my opinion, when God gives you something, like God gives you a gift, a talent, a skill, I feel like sometimes when you are true to yourself about it, or you almost put yourself in a box, or you little yourself, you don't allow yourself to, you know, grow or to be. Because, for example, you have your podcast, and I was just explaining this on yesterday. Like, imagine you went around town and you was like whispering, like, "Hi guys, you know, I have this, you know, this little podcast, you know, that I'm doing, you know, it's a little something."
Yeah.
People look at you like, girl, like, do you have confidence in what you do? Or like, do you even understand the magnitude of what you're doing? Like, you have a podcast. You started a podcast with some people who may have fear, or people that may not know the podcast world. Some people haven't even started a podcast. So for you to start a podcast and then to be episodes and be consistent, like, that's a big deal. And I think it's like we were taught to just keep that kind of like in a bubble, because it's selfish. And I think that's where we have to kind of find the balance with that, because it's like, how are you supposed to make impacts on the world if no one knows what you're doing, because you're trying to remain humble?
Yeah, I think for me, it was a confidence thing because of things I experienced when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went inward,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if that makes sense. And so it got to a point where I didn't know who I was,
Mm-hmm.
or I didn't know my voice,
Mm-hmm.
or the power of my voice.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started podcasting, actually I was in a glam group doing makeup and lashes with a glam group for the Stellar Awards for like 2 years.
Really?
Yeah, so when God was like, start a podcast, sister, I was like, because I was okay with taking pictures,
Mm-hmm.
but to like open up and talk and be transparent, farthest thing from my mind. Like, I did not want to do it. Like, it wasn't my background.
Mm-hmm.
Not knowing anything about design or production or editing or audio, none of that. That was not in my wheelhouse at all.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely took me out of my comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
But here we are, season 11.
Right.
And now it's just like, it's been empowering. And people like you that have been on the show and supported me,
Mm-hmm.
and being guests, because in you telling your journey, it gave me the courage to open up and face my Goliath and do that healing process and that journey, which I feel like is an ongoing process until you take your last breath, you know.
Yeah.
But it's definitely given me much more strength and more courage to open up and share my journey. and even just to connect with other people, because I'll be in a room, you know, and not talk. I'll be in a corner and not talk to anybody unless I knew you.
Yeah.
But now I have confidence. I can go into a room and hi and introduce myself and what do you do, and be more of an introvert. And I probably will always have that introvert part of me.
Yeah.
But the extrovert in me can kick in and function in a social setting.
Yeah. Do you feel like some of the confidence part of you not wanting to maybe like push your podcast more, tell others about it, was because you were outside your comfort zone of speaking?
All of it. Like, it was like a fish out of water.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like, will anyone listen to me?
Mm-hmm.
Will anyone take me seriously, or what I'm putting out seriously, or who would, like those things that go on in your mind, that second guessing, and just realizing that I had to find my own lane and my own space and just navigating that, you know,
Correct.
because there are so many other podcasts out there, but it's like, well, what do I have to bring to the table? What makes me different?
Mm-hmm.
And then realizing, like, yeah, we can make the same strawberry cobbler, but yours won't taste like mine.
Right.
And mine won't taste like yours.
Right.
And so it's all in the presentation. And I think also the essence of you. Because, of course, there's lots of topics on mental health,
Mm-hmm.
black men, whatever, out there. But it's like, but the way you bring it, Khalil, or the way Camille brings it, I think that's the delineating factor is it's the you factor. It's the you factor.
That you factor part is a big piece, and I can totally agree about the you factor, because recently, you know, there was a situation where I had gave someone an idea, you know, for a summit.
Okay.
Yeah, and I went online the other day, and I seen this summit posted online, and we were supposed to do this as a collaborative partnership.
So they just took it and ran with it?
Yep, took it and ran with it.
Okay.
Took it and ran with it. And at first, I didn't get upset because what you just said of the you factor. And I think we have to understand that we have a you factor. When you have something and you present it, or you have a gift that God has given you, or a talent or a skill, show, project, that is something for you.
As far as confidence, where do you think your confidence is now versus before? Like, if you really have to kind of put a stamp on it or mark it, where do you feel like your confidence is at this point?
I think it's way different now than it was when I first started my career.
How?
Because I started therapy. And
come on, black men in
come
therapy.
on, black men in therapy.
I'm here for it.
Yes.
You know how I feel about black men in therapy, well, mental health period.
Yes.
But black men in therapy, I think is, which is part of GBM, Good Black Men.
Yes.
Like, that's so key. So, what was that like?
Yeah, so at first I was scared to do, you know, therapy. Like, I was like, child. Well, actually, let me run it back. I think I was more scared because of what I would think other people would think and what my family told me versus like me.
I wouldn't even told them. Like, I would just do it.
Right, because deep down inside, I think as a man, sometimes you feel like, oh, I gotta tell this person.
That's your journey.
Right.
Right.
And so at first I was like telling, you know, my family, like, oh, I think we're going to therapy. And it's like, you don't need that. You know, you ain't feeling no way or whatever. And I'm
But
just
that's
like,
the thing in our community. It's so taboo. Particularly growing up in church,
mm-hmm.
it was like you pray about it, leave it on the altar,
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think therapy coupled with prayer,
Yes.
I think that's, to me, that's what worked for me.
Yes.
But for you,
Mm-hmm.
like delving into the box of all the stuff,
Yes.
and pulling it out, because we get these things, we have these experiences,
Yep.
and then we want to bury it,
Yep.
and just put it away.
Yep.
And so they have to pull it out, and it's like, ugh.
Right. And that's how it was, you know, feeling at first. Like, oh, wait a minute. You think that it's just this one thing that you know, are feeling, and then you realize, oh, wait, that's a whole bunch of other stuff in the treasure box that you need to pull out and understand about yourself. Like, oh, you think it's like some people think they're just angry. No, if you go back into childhood trauma and all different things, it's a root to that.
Yeah, the source.
So therapy for me has helped me become more confident within myself, because with having a career, I think so many times people focus on the career part first and don't focus on the personal development.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's helped me to hone in on the personal development side and have a foundation for myself of confidence for myself first because sometimes we put our talents and gifts as the base. So when you talk to people, it's like, oh girl, I love your podcast. I love this, da 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 da. And then you're like, well, what about me? How about me as a human? So all those different things.
It's like a baby.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If all those other things, attributes were a part of me, would you still like me as a human? And I think that's the part that has helped me become more confident.
And not them, but do you like you as a human?
That part. Do you like yourself as a human?
Yeah. Because you can hit 6 figures or $1 million and be online flexing all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, you're still broken.
That part.
We're not healed. And not even healed, we're not whole.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm just saying, like, if all this went away, who are you?
Mm.
Who is Khalil?
That part.
Those are the questions you have to ask yourself. Who is Cam?
Right.
You know, and the pandemic really doing some soul searching, looking at the people around me, then reevaluating those people around me, and just saying where I am right now in my life. Is this what I want for myself 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? And looking at it not from like here, but the bigger picture. And that's when you have to say, okay, wait a minute. We need to do some rearrangement here.
Yeah. That's not self-evaluation. Sometimes self-evaluation, child, you be like, oh, that attitude, you need to work on that.
So I got a question.
What's up?
So when I met you, there was like a red couch.
Yes.
With the chalk wall.
Yes.
Now we've gone green.
Yes.
With the money green.
Yes.
What's up? What's up with this?
With the money green?
Yeah.
It's time for a new color.
Okay.
It's time for.
Because red was your thing.
Yes.
So what was the switch?
I think what inspired the switch? I think being a new city.
Yeah.
You know, it's more greenery here. It's more, you're looking at trees. You're looking more at landscape. You're looking at outside. Like, it's more of calmness. Red, you know, is a very high energetic color, and I tell myself, yes,
intense, bold, aggressive.
Yeah.
It can be angry.
And for that season of my life, I feel like that's probably, you know, where I was at.
Really?
Bold, intense, you know, angry, because you started a business, you know, you're, you know, in your earlier stages of it. So I feel like that color worked for me. Now, red is still my favorite color. So, yeah, I don't be surprised because the red couch might just slip back up in there somewhere. Oh, matter of fact, let me put a shameless plug. Yes, because the Content Space New York is opening back up in January.
Okay.
Yeah, so that will still be, you know, in that space. But for here, I was like, it's a new beginning. Like, let's be more calm. Let's be more tranquil.
I get it.
And more earthly tones. I think I'm in a space in my life where I like more earthly tones.
Okay.
Things to be more earthly versus.
I get that. Now that you say it, so when I was living in Nashville before the military and all that, I was very much into like dark colors, like earth tones, like browns, chestnuts, though that color range. And then I went through a phase of like black and maroon, like the darker ends, and it was reflective or indicative of where I was at that point in my life, as far as just in a closed off type of space.
Yep.
And so therapy, working on myself. When I moved to Charlotte, I was like, I want to do something different. So I went to the grays, the white, the other ends.
Yep.
Because I wanted something fresh, light, airy, warm, comfortable, cozy.
Yep.
And like my room is all white.
Yep.
You know, because I wanted an all white room. Because I just felt like it was just a zen space. It felt like being a time of refreshing. New things. And then of course I incorporated the gray tones in my living room, but still.
Listen to Creative Radio anytime on Spotify and the Podcasts app.